Hey, I'm Grant with Grant's Game Rex. These are my top 10 strategy board games of 2024. I will preface that a little bit by saying, if you've watched me, if you watched this channel before, you'll know that I am a medium weight gamer. Those are the types of strategy games that I love, that I prefer. Something that has a lot of interesting choices and strategy, but still plays in 60 to 120 minutes. That's where I live. I've been playing games long enough to know that that's what I prefer, and so that's what this list is. These are the top 10 sort of medium weight games of the year. Part of that is because, if I have 4 hours to play board games with friends, then I want to play 2 or 3 games, not just one game. And so I have no doubt that a game like Civolution is really, really good. It's just not my game. And so, if you're looking for heavyweight games, I'm sure you'll hear lots of other content creators talk about those because there's a lot of great heavyweight games that come out every year. That's just not me. And so, yeah, these are all games that are sort of inherently, bigger box, medium weight strategy games. If you're looking for lighter strategy, I did make a top 10 family games video, and that sort of included a lot of lighter strategy stuff. But these are all medium weight games because that's what I love when it comes to strategy stuff. Thank you so much for being here. Number 10 on my list is the game Arcs from Leader Games. This plays 2 to 4 players in 60 to 120 minutes. Arcs is a very unique game. You are doing a lot of stuff on the board. There is a big board element, and you will be deploying troops and moving troops and repairing stuff and building starports, but you're doing all of that stuff through a trick-taking card mechanism. You will each be playing a card every turn, and that card will get you actions. It will also get you the power of that action. It will also allow you to set the scoring for the round, all that sort of stuff. I've played a lot of trick-taking games that are, small box card games. I've never played one that is sort of a bigger box strategy game with this trick-taking mechanism at its core. And one of the interesting choices of the game is if you play a lower card, that's going to get you more actions. Whereas if you play a higher card, you're going to get less actions, but then you'll win the trick so that you can lead the next one. So if there's a certain suit you want to play because you need to be able to do that sort of stuff, then maybe you want to win the trick to lead the action. And so, it is a very interesting system, a unique system. It is a heavy conflict game. So know that going in, and that's probably why it's at 10 for me and not maybe a little bit higher, is because there's a lot of conflict. And the game really pushes you into conflict. You can't avoid conflict in this game. You are going to be moving around, fighting other people, rolling dice, stealing their troops, destroying their ships, all of this sort of stuff. And so there is just conflict all the time throughout the game. So I hope you like conflict if you're going to check out Arcs, because it is inevitable. The conflict is inevitable in that game. But, interesting, unique game for sure. Number 9 for me is the game Creature Caravan from Red Raven Games. This plays 1 to 4 players in 60 to 90 minutes. This combines sort of engine building, tableau building stuff with dice placement. And all of those things are mechanisms I love. All of those things are types of games that I love. And Creature Caravan is really cool. You are going to be playing cards in front of you, paying for the cost of cards and putting these cards down, and those will open up new dice placement spots for you. You have a board that has sort of basic dice placement spots, but as you play cards, you're going to open up new spots, and it's all about sort of figuring out cool combos. Oh, if I place a dice here and then build this card, then that's going to work off of that card and stuff like that. And so you want to find cool card combos in the game. There's a lot of different cards in the game, and so, there's a lot of replayability in that you can find different combos every time you play the game. One of the things I love in the game is you can help pay for stuff by discarding cards, but every card is good. And so that's always a really interesting and tough choice because you're like, man, am I really going to give up this card to build this other one? And that's so cool, but it's not the strategy I'm going for right now. It doesn't synergize with my other cards, so I'm going to give up this dope card. And I just think that's really interesting, a really interesting push and pull of the game. You know, the artwork's really great and stuff too in the game. The only reason why this isn't higher for me is there is not a lot of player interaction in the game. I like a lot of player interaction. And it's funny I say that right after I say arcs, because I don't know that I always love combat, but I love when you're paying attention to stuff that other people are doing. And in Creature Caravan, you're really doing your own thing. You know, there's not a ton of reasons to be paying attention to what other people are doing or what other people are going for. So it's a somewhat solitary experience. I like what it's doing so much that it still made this list, but, you know that going in that it is decently solitary experience. So if you're looking for a ton of player interaction in your games, Creature Caravan doesn't have it, but the engine building, the dice placement, all that stuff is so cool. If I was looking for like a solo game for the year, I think Creature Caravan would be at the top of that list. You know, it's just, yeah, everything it's doing is cool. Number 8 for me in the top strategy games is the game Evenfall. This is from Matago and Flat River Games. Plays 1 to 4 players in 60 to 120 minutes. All of these videos that I'm doing, I will say, are all sort of US releases because I live in the US and that's where I've gotten stuff. So if you see anything here that says like 2023 on BGG, it's because it came out in Europe in 2023, but we didn't get it in America until 2024. So Evenfall is a game like that. It came out at Essen 2023, but it didn't release in America until June this year. So it is on my list. It involves engine building, which we just talked about, how I love, and some worker placement. You are going to be, putting these cards down in front of you, buying these cards, all this sort of stuff, and then placing out some workers to get some extra actions. And the game is very tight. It is all the time you wish you had one more resource to do this, one more meeple to do this, and I think it's really interesting in that way. You have to optimize your turns and do things well and efficiently, but there's a real cascading effect to your actions and your engine. At the beginning of the game, you're like, okay, I just did that and there wasn't that much, but by the end of the game, you're like, I'm putting this here, that's moving this down, I can take this action, I'm doing this, and that's always just so satisfying when there's an arc to the game, when it ramps up, and by the last round, you're like, I'm gonna keep going, I can do so much. I think the theme is fun. You are, a witch's coven. It comes across somewhat. I don't think it doesn't come across like all the time, but the artwork is cool, the look of the game is cool, and if you like sort of games that ramp up in their engine building, Evenfall is great for that. Number 7 is Maple Valley from Kids Table Board Games. This plays 1 to 5 players in 45 to 75 minutes. This is a worker movement game, not a worker placement game. You will be deploying workers to the board, to the map, and getting resources, using those resources to fulfill cards. All of that stuff is fairly standard, just managing your resources, turning resources in, completing cards, earning points for the cards that you complete. But you will have these little friends, these cards, that will move your worker. And there are set routes all over the board. There are set paths. And so cards will help you move along certain paths. So you're not playing a card and then deploying a worker. You're playing a card and then moving your worker along these routes. And then stopping at places along the routes to get the resources or take the actions or get the special ability, stuff like that. And then you can recruit new friends. You can recruit new cards, which will allow you to have more turns later in the game than you do at the beginning of the game. At the beginning of the game, you only have a couple cards. You're only moving a couple of places. But by the end, you might have 5, 6 friends and you get to do a bunch of stuff. Again, I like that ramp up in games. And this feels fairly different, fairly unique in the worker placement genre because, again, you are moving along these sort of predetermined routes. This is from the same designer as like Creature Comforts and Cafe Barras. So the artwork is adorable. It's really cute. It's lovely. It's cozy. If you want games with all that sort of stuff. But, you know, this is a cozy vibe game, but a lot more strategy than maybe I was thinking. You know, it's kind of ironic it comes from Kids Table board games because I would not describe this as a kids game at all. I would say your kids have to be, you know, pretty advanced to be able to play this game. I just think the different, you know, aspect of moving along these routes with these cards and these workers is cool. Number 6 for me is the game Fractured Sky from IV Games. This plays 1 to 5 players in 45 to 70 minutes. I love sort of bluffing, auction-y type of games like that. And Fractured Sky has a ton of bluffing in it. You will be putting out your airships onto the board to control different areas. But you will use a little token underneath your airship that is how much power you have for that location. And you can deploy 3 airships around, and you can't have more than 10 power out there. And so there's a lot of bluffing of am I putting a 7 right there and then putting a 1 and a 2 somewhere else? Or am I putting a 4 right there? And, you know, there's a lot of feinting and pretending you want this other stuff while you're actually going for this stuff. There's a lot of hidden information in the game. You can spend resources to look at sort of goal cards for the round because not every region is going to give you points. Only some regions are going to give out points every round. And so if I looked at this thing and then I deployed one of my airships there, am I bluffing? And I want you to think that that's where stuff is going to score? Or is that where stuff is actually going to score? And I'm just sending a powerful ship there because I want to control it. And so you're just doing a lot of, you know, it certainly is area control, but there's other aspects of the game. I don't love area control when it's sort of just by itself, but there's enough other stuff going on in this game. There's an engine building aspect where you can build out some marketplaces and towers and things like that will help give you more resources from an area or more control of an area. There's all that hidden information with what's scoring and what's not scoring. I have the deluxe version of the game, and all of the tokens and the airships are magnetic, and I won't lie that definitely, you know, ups my experience of the game. The magnets are so cool in this game where you're behind your privacy screen, you're just taking your airship, click, and the little token, the power token, sticks to the bottom of it, and then you go put it out there, and you're like, man, technology is amazing. Magnets, how do they work? You know what I mean? I think that every time I play this game. So, yeah, if you like bluffing, hidden information, area control, check out Fractured Sky. Number 5 for me is Rock Hard 1977 from Devere. This plays 2 to 5 players in 45 to 90 minutes. It is a worker placement game all about becoming a rock star. And the theme really does come through in this game. That's one of the best parts of it, is that you feel, you know, like you are playing bigger and bigger venues throughout the game. You feel like you're building up your, you know, stats as a band. You're getting better at music. You're getting better at songwriting. You're doing all this sort of stuff. So the way the game works is there's sort of a morning, evening, and night sort of column, and you are going to be placing a worker in each of these columns every round of the game and taking different actions in those areas. And those actions are going to be, you know, bumping up your knobs. You literally have these like little cool music knobs on your board, and so those are going to bump up your stats. Or you're going to gain money for playing venues, and hopefully you can play bigger and bigger venues throughout the game. And you're going to recruit crew members. You're going to go to after hours hang spots and try to meet with famous people and people that can help your career and stuff like that. It is, it's so thematic. There is what's called candy in the game, which is for sure just drugs. It is DeVere was like, we can't publish a game that has drugs in it, so we're going to turn it into candy. And you can take candy at certain points of the game to like get you extra actions, but it also bumps up your addiction level. And, that's going to be bad if you don't get it down. You're going to have to go to rehab at some point for your candy addiction and stuff like that. And so it really is quite thematic, and I love that about the game. I feel like it's almost like easier to teach people as a worker placement game because everything sort of makes sense thematically. Everything connects, and why you would do something makes sense in the game. So yeah, if you like being a rock band, then check out Rock Hard 1977. Number 4 for me is the game Ironwood. I included this in my top 2-player games of the year. It comes from Mind Clash Games. It is a 1 to 2-player game, and it plays in 30 to 60 minutes. Ironwood is a game that I feel like you could compare to chess or something like that, in that the rule set is fairly simple, but the deepness of strategy is interesting and elegant. There's an elegance to the game of Ironwood where it's like you're constantly thinking about when to go on the offensive, when to go on the defensive, when to sort of take control, when to fight the other player, all of this sort of stuff. It's this real interesting push and pull throughout the game. It is an asymmetric game, so the 2 players will be doing very different things on the board. One player is trying to summon these tokens and then move the tokens to the outer forest, whereas the other player is trying to mine the mountains and get resources out of the mountains. And there is a decent amount of conflict in the game, but the conflict itself is also fairly elegant. If we are battling in a region, we're both going to pick a card from our hand and put it down and then flip the cards, and they will have stats on their side, and those stats line up, and then who wins the fight? We each have power, we each have defense, we have, attacking abilities with these stats and stuff like that. And the other interesting thing about that is cards are dual use. They have a bottom part of them that is an action, or the top part, which is those stats for conflict. And so do I want to commit this card to conflict? Because then I lose the cool power and special ability of the card. The game, the replayability in the game is about the asymmetric decks of cards. You will be doing a lot of exploring combos between cards, synergies between cards, ways to sort of combo your actions together by the cards that you're playing in the game. And I just feel like it is a deep strategy, elegant, but simple to learn game. Ironwood is great. Number 3 for me is the game Skyrise from Roxley Games. This plays 2 to 4 players in 30 to 90 minutes. I mentioned earlier, I love an auction bidding game. Those are some of my favorite games out there because, again, I think auction bidding games come with a lot of choices, but all of them they're fairly easy to teach games. And when we talk about player interaction, there's a lot of thinking about what other people are going for, what are they doing, what do they want, how can you outbid them, how can you force the bid up because they want it, all of that sort of stuff. I just love the social interaction of auction bidding games. And Skyrise is a really cool auction bidding game. You are going to have predetermined pieces. Each player will have their own pieces, and those pieces come with a number on it, and that is your bid for the turn. And so you're going to be placing a piece out onto the board, and that is saying that that's how much I'm bidding to sort of leave my piece in this location. And then the next player can place another piece down at an adjacent location, but their bid has to be higher than the one you play. And then they can do it. And so it keeps coming around, and you can even bid again. And so you're forming a line sort of connected areas of increasing bids until everybody passes. You win the bid with that building that you put down, and now that building is stuck in that location. And so you are trying to do different area control. You're trying to get different colored spots. You'll get points for different colored spots. You're doing a little bit of sort of engine building in that way, and that you're bumping up the stats on your own personal board for the different colors that you have and stuff like that. But I just think that bidding mechanism where you're bidding with these buildings, and if you win the bid, now you lose that building, and that building is set on the board, is just really cool and interesting and different, and again, you have predetermined buildings beforehand. So when do you want to use your big value buildings? When do you want to lose your small value buildings? It's interesting on how you use different stuff on the board. So if you like auction bidding games, Skyrise is a unique one and very fun. Number 2 for me is the game Fromage from Road to Infamy. This plays 1 to 4 players in 30 to 45 minutes. There is a lot of simultaneous play in Fromage, and so it plays way quicker than you think it's going to. I really have played, fairly, deep strategic games of this that still only took 40 minutes to play. And it's not like it's just completely solitaire, because each turn you are going to have a wedge of the main board facing you, and you can play workers into that wedge, and you can play your cheese into that wedge. And there's still some player interaction, because we're all kind of fighting for points in different ways in the different wedges. So I'm still paying attention to what you're going for over there, because then every turn the board is going to rotate, and I need to sort of plan for what you're doing, of how I'm doing it, and how I'm going to beat you to stuff or concede stuff to you. And so it feels like there's still player interaction in the game of Fromage. But the most interesting thing, the most unique aspect of the game, is you are deploying workers to spots, and then the board is rotating, and you only get workers back that face you. So the wedges where you're putting out workers are going to face this way, or this way. And anything facing this way is more powerful. You're going to get more resources, you're going to get more points, you're going to get more stuff. But then the board rotates, and it takes 3 turns for you to get that worker back. So you better deploy that at the right time. Whereas if I deploy a worker to a wedge that looks like this, it's going to rotate and then face me. I get it back the very next turn, but I'm not going to get as many resources. I'm not going to get as many points. I'm not going to get as many cool stuff with that. So it's a real interesting timing aspect of how you want to play stuff out, how you're going to deploy to which type of wedge, when you're going to get it back, how to pre-plan turns ahead so you know when you're getting workers for a region that you really want points in. And each of these sort of wedges of the main board scores you points in different ways. And so, yeah, it's just really interesting and unique. It's a different way to do worker placement, and I like worker placement games a lot, and I have not seen this sort of like when they're facing you, you get them back aspect before, so super cool. And my number 1 strategy game of 2024 is the game River of Gold from Office Dog Games. Plays 2 to 4 players in 60 to 90 minutes. River of Gold is one of these games where I'm always surprised at how quickly it plays. I love games that have a depthness of strategy, but still every turn is quick. Every turn is snappy. And River of Gold just boom, 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 boom. I feel like you're never waiting for a long time. There's no downtime in between turns, because turns are pretty quick. You are doing some engine building, you are moving up on tracks, you are scoring points in a bunch of different ways. On your turn, you can build a building along the side of the river, and the buildings will get you immediate benefits. But also, if then somebody in the future, including yourself, sails down the river and lands on a spot where you have a building, you're going to get a benefit from that too. So, there's some engine building right there. You can sail your ship and get resources in a bunch of different ways. You can use resources to build cards to serve customers. I forget what they call it. But those cards are going to get you immediate benefits, and then usually ongoing benefits. Those are going to get you some engine building stuff too, where now I have this cool special ability for the rest of the game. And each region that you go to is going to bump you up in tracks for that sort of area, and then you're going to get benefits for that. You're going to get resources for that. You're going to get points for that. Again, everything is fairly simple in River of Gold, but it all just works really well together. You know, it just, I feel like there's a lot of stuff. This is another game that kind of really surprised me. I had a chance to play it at Dice Tower East for the first time, and I was like, oh my God, I love this. You know, it's so cool, and I've played it a lot throughout the year. If you want a depthness of strategy, but still fairly easy to teach, I feel like River of Gold hits that sweet spot really, really well. And it looks gorgeous. All the artwork is great. All the stuff. The insert is like the only bad part of the game. The insert sucks in the game, and I'm annoyed by that. But you know what? It's okay because the game is great enough that I don't care that much. So yeah, those are my top 10 strategy games of the year. So if you're looking for a medium weight game, all of these are really, really great games. And I'm going to keep all these in my collection and keep playing these for years to come, I'm sure. So thank you so much for joining me for all of these top 10 category videos that I'm doing. You know, if you haven't seen any of the other ones, I've done like top family games and top party games and top card games and top cooperative games and stuff like that. And I will be releasing my top 10 overall games of the year very soon. Thank you so much. I'm Grant with Grant's Game Rex.